Hello and welcome. You're watching the newsroom breaking this hour. A Ukrainian delegation is meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff in Florida for the latest round of negotiations over the U.S.-backed plan to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner is also attending the meeting in Miami with other high-level officials. In the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio calls for better security guarantees for Ukraine and to secure a better and secure future. Now, Ukraine is seeking international security guarantees as part of any agreement to end the war and a ceasefire based on the current front lines, while also rejecting to cede any territory not already occupied by Russian forces. Marco Rubio met the Ukrainian delegation in Geneva last week, but since then the lead Ukrainian negotiator, Andriy Yermak, has resigned amid a corruption scandal in Ukraine. Yermak's place as lead negotiator has been taken by Rustem Umerov, who's the head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council. Let's have a look at what Rubio had to say during the talks.
The end goal is obviously not just the end of the war. Obviously, that's central and fundamental. We want to see the end of the killing and the death and the suffering, and I'm sure the Ukrainian side, I know they do as well. They want peace, but it's also about securing an end to the war that leaves Ukraine sovereign and independent and with an opportunity at real prosperity. So this is not just about ending a war. This is about ending a war in a way that creates a mechanism and a way forward that will allow them to be independent and sovereign, never have another war again, and create tremendous prosperity for its people. Not just rebuild the country, but to enter an era of extraordinary economic progress. So we expect to make even more progress today, and we're great.
Moving on, Ukraine's National Security Chief Alexander Umerov says that Kyiv's delegation is working to secure real peace for Ukraine as it prepares for another crucial round of talks with the United States. Umerov stressed that the delegation is focused on achieving a peace framework that protects Ukraine's sovereignty and long-term security, not just a temporary pause in fighting. He also highlighted that Kyiv is approving and approaching the negotiation with unity and discipline, saying that Ukraine cannot afford mistakes or division at this stage of the war. And up next, the Russian Defense Ministry confirms that Russian air defense forces intercepted 33 Ukrainian drones across several regions in the Black Sea. The ministry says that defense systems destroyed 16 drones over Rostov region, 7 other over Krasnodar, and 3 over Belgorod, 1 over Kursk, and 6 over the Black Sea. Now, the overnight attacks have caused significant disruption in the Rostov region, where a Ukrainian drone strike damaged a boiler house in the town of Kukov. The facility supplies heating to 128-building apartments, along with 2 hospitals, 4 schools, and 6 kindergartens. Authorities evacuated staff and suspended heating as a precaution. In fact, Governor Yuri Slyorsk also says that bomb disposal engineers will inspect the site before repair work begins. Additional drone activity was recorded in Novoshastinsk and the Shertkovsky and Manovsky districts. Now, despite the scale of the attacks, officials say there are no immediate reports of casualties. On the other hand, according to Ukraine's State Emergency Service, a Russian drone strike has killed 1 person and wounded 11 others, including a child near Kyiv. The attack targeted Vashgorod, a town on the outskirts of the Ukrainian capital. White House advisor. And moving on, White House advisor Kevin Hassett has stated that he would be ready to serve if U.S. President Donald Trump selects him as the next Federal Reserve Chair. Hassett is currently the director of the National Economic Council and is seen as the leading contender. His long-standing alignment with U.S. President's economic views has strengthened his position inside the White House. Moreover, reports have also indicated that Trump would have someone he knows and trusts at the top of the Fed, and that Hassett's support for lower interest rates, fits the president's economic approach. However, officials involved in the process caution that the final decision remains uncertain, as the president is known for making late and unpredictable choices. The White House has also signaled that there is no clear indication of what the president will decide until he announces it. Up next, viewers, Pope Leo XIV has arrived in Beirut, Lebanon for a 3-day state visit, marking the first foreign trip since he was appointed in May. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, along with others and clergy, welcomed the Pope. Crowds waving Lebanese and Vatican flags lined the streets, welcoming the first American pontiff to the presidential palace in Baabda, where he will also address the country's authorities and civil society. During his visit, Pope Leo will meet political leaders, young people, and religious figures, emphasizing dialogue and unity amid heightened regional tensions. He is expected to visit the monastery of Marmaru in Anaya to pray at the tomb of Charbel Makhlouf, a monk known for fostering interfaith harmony. The Pope will also commemorate the victims of the 220 Beirut port explosion and celebrate Mass on the Beirut waterfront. His visit follows an Israel strike in southern Lebanon and southern Beirut that killed 5 people, highlighting the fragile security situation. In fact,
la Santa Sede già da diversi anni pubblicamente appoggia la proposta di una soluzione di 2 Stati. Sappiamo tutti che in questo momento ancora Israele non accetta quella soluzione, ma lo vediamo come l'unica soluzione che potrebbe offrire una, una soluzione al conflitto che continuamente vivono. Noi siamo anche amici di Israele e cerchiamo, con le 2 parti a essere, una voce mediatrice che possa aiutare a avvicinarci a una soluzione con giustizia per tutti.
The US President Donald Trump has announced that the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela should be considered completely closed. Now, the announcement that came yesterday caused confusion in Caracas and also among US officials who said that they were not aware of any ongoing military operations that would have prompted such a definitive closure. This declaration by the US President comes amid an escalating campaign against Venezuelan drug trafficking networks, which his administration believes and blames for American deaths from consumption of illegal drugs. Trump has also warned of impending land operations to target suspected traffickers. Meanwhile, Venezuela has condemned the action, calling it a hostile and illegal move which also violates international law. Iran, an ally of Venezuela, has also denounced Trump's move as a threat to global aviation safety. And experts are in fact saying that imposing a no-fly zone over Venezuela would require significant planning, resources and military capabilities. Moreover, it can also lead to widespread security implications. Now, authorities in Venezuela have responded by increasing surveillance and patrols, particularly in the northeastern state of Sucre, where US boat strikes have previously occurred. GPS signals have also been reportedly disrupted across the country in recent weeks amid the US buildup. Next up, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing longer-running corruption cases as submitted a formal pardon request to President Isaac Herzog. President Herzog's office says that after receiving all of the relevant opinions, the president will responsibly and sincerely consider the request. Earlier this month, US President Donald Trump wrote to President Herzog asking him to pardon Netanyahu, who has repeatedly denied wrongdoing in the ongoing court cases. Let's listen to what Netanyahu had to say today.
הגישו היום עורכי דיני בקשה לחנינה לנשיא המדינה. אני מצפה שכל מי שטובת המדינה לנגד עיניו יתמוך בצעד זה. מדינת ישראל ניצבת מול אתגרים כבירים ולצידם הזדמנויות אדירות. כדי להדוף את האיומים, כדי לממש את ההזדמנויות נדרשת אחדות לאומית. המשך המשפט קורע אותנו מבפנים, מעורר מחלקות הזאת, מעצים שסעים.
And Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid has called on President Isaac Herzog not to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unless he admits to guilt, expresses remorse and retires from politics, as it would harm the rule of law and allow the premier to evade responsibility for his alleged actions. Lapid's statement came shortly after Prime Minister Netanyahu asked the country's president for a pardon in years-long corruption trial, arguing that criminal proceedings were hindering his ability to govern and a pardon would be good for Israel. Let's listen into what Israeli opposition leader had to say.
אני קורא מפה לנשיא הרצוג. אתה לא יכול לתת לו חנינה בלי הודעה באשמה, הבעת חרטה ופרישה מיידית.
And senior members of ruling coalition praised Netanyahu's decision to seek a formal pardon, and Defense Minister Israel Katz has called on President Isaac Herzog to accede to Netanyahu's request for a pardon, arguing that such a move would bring an end to the severe division that splits the nation. Meanwhile, President Herzog's office announced earlier that the request had been received, releasing the letter from the lawyers and adding that the request would be processed according to standard practice. Meanwhile, Israelis have given mixed reactions on the developments. Some say a pardon should only be considered if the court finds Netanyahu guilty or he resigns under conditions. Others believe that a preemptive pardon could relieve him of responsibility for events of October 7. Let's listen into some of these statements coming in.
I think that if he would resign, I would be happy to grant him reconciliation. My son was killed on October 7th on the kibbutz, and I think that he should take responsibility for that. He should resign, and he should encourage setting up a national committee of inquiry. So there's justification for ending the trial, but only if he would resign.
If he can't manage being the Prime Minister of the country and going to the trial, he should resign as Prime Minister. And I would be very happy to see him resign and for the trial to come to an end. And if he is found guilty, then he can apply for a pardon. But to ask for a pardon without admitting any guilt, without losing any position, without it affecting his life whatsoever, other than that he gets off scot-free, I certainly don't think that he should get it.
I think basically it was a minor infraction, and it really won't help the country except for people who hate Netanyahu. So I would hope Herzog will agree and that we can get done with all this.
And moving on now, Hondurans are voting today in a closely contested presidential election under a cloud of heated fraud accusations in one of Latin America's poorest countries. The race is essentially a toss-up, with polls showing a near tie among the top three contenders. Former Defense Minister Rishi Moncada of the ruling leftist Libre Party, former Tegucigalpa Mayor Nasri of Rusa of the Conservative National Party, and television host Salvador Nasrallah of the centrist Liberal Party. Since 2021, Honduras has been led by President Xiomara Castro, who has forged close ties with Cuba and Venezuela. In fact, President Donald Trump has endorsed Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted of drug trafficking charges in a U.S. court last year. Meanwhile, the ruling party candidate this year has accused Trump of interfering in the election by endorsing her right-wing opponent. Listen to what Rishi Moncada, ruling party presidential candidate, had to say.
País. No hay ninguna duda que hay dos acciones concretas a 3 días de las elecciones que son totalmente injerencistas. Tenemos una buena relación con Estados Unidos, particularmente en este gobierno en materia comercial, en materia de defensa. Miles de migrantes dan su fuerza de trabajo a familias norteamericanas en Estados Unidos. Esas relaciones son reales, no se pueden. Nosotros defendemos principios universales de autodeterminación de los pueblos, de independencia, de respeto a la soberanía, al orden democrático, al poder.
Let's also listen to the pulse of Honduras now.
Hay mucha ansiedad de las personas, hay bastante ansiedad de lo que va a pasar esta noche, mañana, especialmente en el sector privado. Yo trabajo en el sector privado y todo está parado, las cenas navideñas, las reuniones, todo el mundo está a la expectativa de que vaya bien.
Creemos que se ha hecho todo lo posible para tener esto, elecciones limpias, transparentes y que todos podamos ejercer el sufragio y lo más importante, que tu voto cuente. Porque así se culmina la democracia, cuando se acuden a las urnas, pero cuando cuentan.
Up next, we have the mass shooting at a family gathering inside a banquet hall in Stockton, California, left at least 4 people dead and 10 others injured. According to Heather Brent, spokesperson for the Han-Huacan County Sheriff's Office, the victims included both children and adults, and early indications suggest that this may have been a targeted incident. Local officials say that the suspected shooter has not been caught and has pleaded the public for help to catch the shooter. The violence adds Stockton to a growing list of American communities whose everyday spaces like schools, shopping centers, bars and office buildings have experienced gun violence. And Sri Lanka's death toll from Cyclone Ditwah has climbed to 334, with over 400 missing. The flood waters have reportedly breached the dam. Meanwhile, the rescue operations continue in Sri Lanka. As per the Disaster Management Committee, nearly 1 million people are impacted by heavy rains and floods that swept through large parts of South Asian island nation, forcing nearly 200,000 people into 1,275 shelters. Over 24,000 police, army and air force personnel are still trying to reach families stranded by the floods. Meanwhile, India has extended help to Sri Lanka. It has launched Operation Sagar Bandhu. India has deployed INS Vikrant and INS Udaygiri to assist the affected families. It has also sent 2 large cargo aircraft carrying 21 tons of relief materials to Colombo. Let's show you what the officials have said about the prevailing situation.
ඒ ප්‍රදේශවල ජල ගැලීම් තත්ත්වය තවදුරටත් වර්ධනය වෙමින් පවතිනවා. ඒ අනුව ඒ ප්‍රදේශවලින් ඉවත් වීමට කටයුතු කරන්න කියලා. මොකද විමසිල්ලෙන් ඉන්න ලෙසත් ඒ වගේම වැඩි වෙන ජල ප්‍රවාහය හේතු කොටගෙන
ගැඹුරු පීඩන අවපාතයක් බවට පරිවර්තනය වෙමින් තමයි ඉන්දියාව දෙසට ගමන් කරන්නේ. එතකොට මේකේ ඍජු බලපෑම දැන් කොහොමත් නැහැ. හැබැයි වක්‍ර බලපෑම හේතු කොටගෙන දිවයිනේ සමහර කොටස්වල සුළු සුළු වර්ෂාපතන ලැබීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා.
And moving on to news from Indonesia, the death toll from flooding and landslides in the islands has surged to 442. This comes as rescue teams continue evacuations and assess widespread damage. Major roads remain cut off while electricity and internet services are only partially restored. Cyclone Ditwah, which is an exceptionally rare tropical storm, has caused catastrophic flooding and landslides, sweeping away homes and submerging thousands of buildings. Residents in Aceh province described waters rising within seconds, forcing them to cling to rooftops and clotheslines for survival. Many have lost their homes and possessions, with communities struggling to recover. In Tapanuli, the worst affected area, residents reportedly raided shops in search of food amid severe shortages. Disaster authorities warn that hundreds remain stranded despite tens of thousands being evacuated. There are some reactions coming in from the residents. Let's listen in.
Nggak ada duit pun lah. Kami nggak ada duit pun, 1.000 pun nggak ada. Nggak sabarlah dulu. Nggak ada apa-apa, baju semua. Ya, sekarang dah mau disimpan kan sudah air sudah naik ke kepala. Nggak bisa berdiri lagi. Sudah habis semua. Nggak ada lagi. Nggak ada tersisa. Yang tinggal pondasi ini aja. Ini sudah hanyut semuanya, sudah kayak jadi sungai. Ya.
And up next, the death toll of the Hong Kong apartment building fire, which engulfed 7 tower blocks on Wednesday, has risen to 146. According to the Hong Kong police, at least 79 people were injured in the fire, and the police have completed the search operation in 4 blocks. But the entire process of searching the burnt buildings is expected to take around 3 to 4 weeks. Meanwhile, 8 people have been arrested on suspicion of corruption over the renovation works the blocks had been undergoing, and the 3 others were detained earlier on manslaughter charges. After Hong Kong's deadliest fire in over 75 years, thousands are angered and saddened, determined to gain justice for the victims, even as Beijing warned it would use a national security law to crack down on any anti-China protest in wake of the fire. Let's have a look at what the officer in charge of the Casualty Inquiry Unit had to say.
直至到今日嘅下晝4點鐘咧，最新嘅遇難者數目咧係去到146名㗎啦。咁而我哋都唔排除咧嗰個死亡嘅個案咧會上升嘅。
悲痛同埋係咯，好複雜嘅心情嚟到呢一個地方咁樣咯。咁沿途見到好多人都係一齊排隊，好耐心咁等候，同埋一個即係獻花嘅。咁我體會到就係整個香港都市，我哋都帶咗好多嘅愛心，同埋係咯，大家都好想紀念呢件事情。
希望其實大家都好無助，呢個係唯一留翻喺度嘅人可以做嘅嘢。係。
你有冇希望話呢件事就
當然，即係我估災民上要幫佢哋嘅嘢有好多，咁但係另一樣就無論喺政策上定係點，我估呢啲都係下一步應該要去處理。
And viewers, Peruvian President Jose Jerry says that Peru is set to declare a state of emergency along its proper border with Chile, aiming to control the influx of migrants attempting to enter the country. The president said the measure is intended to generate tranquility before the risk of migrants entering without authorization. Peruvian authorities report that at least 100 foreigners, mostly Venezuelans, are currently waiting at the border to cross. Police General Arturo Valverde confirmed that surveillance has been increased in anticipation of the emergency declaration, with officers closely monitoring the area to prevent unauthorized crossings. The move comes after Chilean President frontrunner Jose Antonio Cast vowed to expel undocumented migrants. Cast stated that those who do not leave voluntarily will face detention and deportation, warning that they will leave with what you have on. Peru's state of emergency aims to manage migration flows, strengthen border security, and prevent tension between authorities and incoming migrants in the coming weeks. The political rhetoric surrounding immigration is intensifying in both the countries as the situation at the border remains tense. And Chancellor of the Exchequer of UK, Rachel Reeves, has defended herself amid accusations of misleading voters with her latest budget. In an interview, Reeves pointed to the manifesto commitments on income tax, national insurance, and VAT rates, saying she has stuck to those in both her budget. She also said that she was clear before this year's budget that everyone would be asked to make a contribution to protect funding for public services. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also said that he will be backing the Chancellor Rachel Reeves' budget, pledging the government will go further and faster with pro-growth policies. Starmer is expected to highlight Rachel Reeves' measures as a way to alleviate cost of living pressures, lower inflation, and stabilize the economy, despite some critics questioning the transparency of the public finances ahead of the budget. The Conservatives have accused Reeves of being overly pessimistic about the UK's economic outlook, claiming she misled the public to justify future tax hikes. The Prime Minister's office has also defended the Chancellor, dismissing accusations of misleading voters. Moving on, the UK government is preparing to propose a major overhaul of its criminal justice system next week in a bid to tackle the growing backlog of nearly 80,000 cases. Justice Secretary David Lammy plans to reintroduce reforms that aim to speed up the legal process and prioritize victims. The Labour government has warned that without action, the number of cases waiting to be heard could rise to 100,000 by 2028. Some quote hearings are scheduled as far as 2030, with more than a quarter of cases delayed by a year or longer. The proposed reforms include creating a new division for mid-level offences and limiting jury trials for minor cases, though legal groups have raised concerns about restricting jury trials, which they argue is a fundamental right. And with that, it's a wrap on Newsroom. Keep watching for more breaking news updates.